The road was empty that morning. The sun had barely begun to rise on the horizon when Marcus appeared, running, his bare feet slapping against the still cold asphalt. He stumbled, fell to his knees, and the impact tore a raw scream from his throat. His hands were burned, skin peeling in red and black strips. Smudges of soot covered his face. Tears left clean trails on his ash-stained cheeks. He was clutching something to his chest, a small bundle, wrapped in dark cloth that had once been white. The smell of burnt flesh rose from the fabric. Marcus looked up at the sky, still breathing in uneven sobs, and repeated the same words he had been muttering since he had run from the burning house. He asked me to. He begged me. His voice broke. I didn't have a choice. 3 weeks earlier, the midday sun beat down on the Hargrove quarry with an intensity that made the air shimmer over the rocks. Robert Mitchell pulled his sweat-soaked shirt away from his chest and wiped his forehead with his forearm. At 42, he was still hauling stones that would make younger men complain of back pain for a week. Trevor Moss, his work partner for nearly 10 years, appeared, pushing a wheelbarrow loaded with tools. Trevor was 5 years younger, but his prominent gut and wheezing breath betrayed a life of after-hours beers. "Your brother called again," Trevor said, dropping the wheelbarrow with a metallic clang. "Secretary passed on the message, said it's important." Robert snorted and continued hammering a wedge into the rock face before him. "Marcus always thinks it's important. I bet he wants me to get a checkup again." "And you should," Trevor countered, wiping the sweat from his face with a dirty bandana. "When was the last time you saw a doctor? Doctors are for people who have money to spare and time to be sick." Robert slammed the sledgehammer harder than necessary. The wedge sank another 3 centimeters into the stone. "My body can take it. Always has." Trevor laughed, but there was worry in his eyes. "You're getting as stubborn as your old man, Mitchell. Look how he ended up." Robert stopped hammering and shot a sharp look at his friend. Trevor raised his hands in surrender. All right. I won't press it. But call Marcus at least. The guy worries." Before Robert could answer, the whistle for lunch sounded. The 2 men dropped their tools and walked to the shaded area where the workers gathered. Robert pulled a dented lunchbox from his backpack and ate in silence, observing the quarry around him. It had been different in recent weeks. They had descended deeper than usual, reaching layers of rock that hadn't seen sunlight for millions of years. The company's geologists were agitated, talking about unusual rock formation and abnormal density readings. Robert didn't understand half the jargon, but he knew excitement when he saw it. That night, Robert arrived home after the sun had set. The house was small, a wooden structure that he and Julia had bought 5 years ago, still paying installments that ate up a good portion of his salary. The kitchen lights were on, and the smell of stew drifted through the front door. Julia was at the sink, washing the dinner dishes. She turned when she heard the door and smiled, but the smile faltered when she saw his expression. "Marcus called," she said, drying her hands on a dishcloth. 3 times. Robert sighed and tossed his backpack onto the sofa. "I know," Trevor told me. "He's worried, Robert. He said you haven't had a physical in 4 years. "I'm fine, Julia." He went to the refrigerator and grabbed a bottle of water. "Marcus exaggerates, always has." "He's a doctor, Robert. Maybe you should listen to what he has to say." Robert drank half the bottle in one go and leaned against the counter, looking at his wife. Julia was 37, her brown hair always tied back in a practical ponytail, and her eyes could see through any lie he tried to tell. "I know my body," he said, gentler now. "If something were wrong, I'd know." Julia crossed her arms but didn't press. She knew her husband long enough to know when to back off, at least call him. "Just to tell him you're okay." Robert nodded in agreement and went to take a shower, but he didn't call. He never did. The blast happened the next day. It was a typical Tuesday, the sky clear and the heat already unbearable by 9 in the morning. The demolition crew had prepared the charges on the quarry's north wall, a particularly dense section that had been resisting conventional excavation. Robert and Trevor were a safe distance away when the foreman gave the signal. The first boom was normal. The rock trembled, cracks spread across the surface, and pieces began to break loose. But then came the second boom. Different, deeper. The sound echoed as if it came from far below, from some hollow place that shouldn't be there. The entire wall shifted. It didn't collapse. It shifted, as if something had given way behind it. "Fall back," the foreman yelled, but it was already too late. The rock came down like an avalanche, tons of ancient stone cascading. Robert saw the movement, tried to run, but his feet got tangled in a steel cable. He fell face first onto the ground, and the last thing he saw was a wall of stone rushing toward him. The impact never came. When the dust cleared and he managed to open his eyes, Robert realized he was partially buried, legs trapped under smaller rocks, but alive. Above him, forming an improbable shelter, was a single gigantic stone, and by chance of fate, in the part of the rock that fell over him, there was a fissure large enough for him, but it didn't look like an ordinary stone. Robert blinked, trying to focus, his vision blurred by the dust. The surface of the rock protecting him was strange, porous, almost organic in texture, like fossilized bone or ancient coral, and it was cracked. Deep fissures ran across its entire length, exposing an interior that glowed faintly even in the sunlight, and it was hot. Robert felt the heat radiating from the stone, much more intense than expected from mere sun exposure. It was a damp, almost feverish heat. Then he saw the liquid. It oozed from the stone's fissures, thick and viscous, amber-colored with greenish reflections. It dripped directly onto him, falling into the open wounds on his arms and chest where smaller stones had scratched him. The burning was instantaneous. Robert screamed, the sound muffled by the dust and the shouts of other workers. The liquid stung like acid, but at the same time there was something more to the sensation. Something that pulsed, that moved, that entered. Robert, are you okay? Trevor appeared beside him, his face pale with fright. Other men came running, beginning to remove the smaller stones trapping his legs. This rock here is protecting him, someone said. Let's lift it carefully. It took 15 minutes to free Robert. When they finally managed to lift the strange stone with an improvised crane, he could sit up and assess the damage. Cuts and scrapes all over his body, but nothing broken. Absurd luck. The stone was set aside, among the rubble. No one looked at it again. Everyone was too concerned with checking for other injured people. Robert sat, trembling slightly. The smell of the liquid was still in his nostrils, sweet and metallic, like rotten meat mixed with honey. He looked at his arms. The liquid had dried, leaving a thin, translucent film over the wounds. He ran a finger over the substance. It was warm and sticky. We're taking you to the hospital, Trevor said, helping him to his feet. No. Robert's answer was automatic. I'm fine, just scrapes. Robert, you nearly died. But I didn't. He pulled away from his friend, testing his legs. They ached, but they held his weight. I'm not wasting money on a hospital because of a scratch. The foreman approached, radio in hand and a serious expression. Mitchell, you should go for an evaluation. The company covers it. I said I'm fine. Robert looked around, saw the other workers watching him. He straightened his shoulders, ignoring the pain. I'm going home. I'll be back tomorrow. Before anyone could argue, he started walking toward the parking lot. Trevor ran after him. At least let me drive you. Robert accepted, not because he needed to, or so he told himself, but because his legs were starting to tremble, and he wasn't sure he could drive. During the entire ride, he distractedly rubbed his arms, trying to get rid of the feeling of the dry film on his skin, but it wouldn't come off. It seemed to have been absorbed, fused with the flesh itself, and the wounds, he realized with a quick glance, were no longer bleeding. Julia was in the kitchen when he arrived. She dropped the wooden spoon she was holding as soon as she saw the state he was in. My God, Robert, what happened? Cave in at the quarry. He walked inside and went straight to the bathroom. It was nothing serious. Nothing serious. Julia followed him, her voice rising an octave. You're covered in blood. Most of it is just dust. He turned on the shower, waiting for the water to heat up. I'm going to take a shower. I'll be right back. But Julia didn't leave the bathroom. She crossed her arms and leaned against the sink, eyes fixed on him. Did you go to the hospital? Didn't need to. Robert Mitchell, I almost nothing, Julia. He took off his shirt, revealing the cuts on his arms and chest. Look, they're just scratches. I'll wash up, you put on a dressing, and I'll be fine by tomorrow. Julia stepped closer, examining the injuries with a clinical eye. She had worked as a nursing assistant before they married, so she knew what to look for. Her fingers gently touched one of the cuts on his arm. These cuts, they look like they're already closing? Robert looked. She was right. The edges of the wounds were already beginning to join, the flesh regenerating at a rate that seemed too fast. I've always healed fast, he said, shrugging. Julia didn't look convinced, but she also didn't argue. She left the bathroom and came back with the first aid kit. Take your shower, then I'll clean this properly. Robert closed the door and stepped into the shower. The hot water hit the wounds, and he hissed in pain. He scrubbed his body hard, trying to remove all the dust and dried blood, and that strange film. But no matter how much he scrubbed, the sensation of something stuck to his skin remained. When he stepped out of the shower 20 minutes later, Julia was waiting with gauze and antiseptic. She carefully cleaned each wound, applied antibiotic ointment, and bandaged the worst cuts. "You should call Marcus," she said while she worked. "He'd want to know." "Why worry him? It was nothing." "Robert—" "Julia, please." He held her hand, interrupting her movement. "I'm fine, really." She sighed but nodded. She finished the bandages in silence. That night, Robert went to bed early, exhausted. Julia snuggled up next to him, her hand resting on his chest, feeling his breathing slow as sleep approached. But Robert couldn't fall completely asleep. There was an itch, deep, right beneath the skin, where no nail could reach. It started on his arms in the areas where the liquid had touched the wounds. Then it spread, chest, shoulders, back, and there was heat, not a fever. At least it didn't feel like a fever. It was something more localized, as if small pockets of high temperature existed beneath the surface of his skin. He turned over in bed, trying to find a comfortable position. The itching worsened. He scratched his left arm, feeling the texture of his skin strangely thicker beneath his fingers. Must be swelling, he thought, normal after an accident. But in the back of his mind, a small, insistent voice whispered that this wasn't normal, that he should have gone to the hospital, that he should call Marcus. Robert ignored the voice and forced his eyes shut. Sleep finally came, but it brought strange dreams. Dreams of things moving under the earth, of ancient stones splitting open, of something liquid and alive flowing inside him, settling and taking root. He woke up at 3 a.m. The itching had become unbearable. Robert got out of bed carefully so as not to wake Julia and went to the bathroom. He turned on the light, blinking against the sudden glare, and looked at his arms. The skin was different, thicker, yes, but not just swollen. There was an almost waxy quality to the texture, and in some spots the color was slightly altered, a yellowish tinge that wasn't bruising. He touched his right arm. The skin yielded under pressure, but there was something firm underneath, something that wasn't muscle, and then he saw it, a thin line on the skin just below the elbow. The line rose slightly, as if something were pushing from the inside out. Robert watched, fascinated and horrified, as the bulge moved, slow, deliberate, like an air bubble under leather. He pressed his finger against the bulge. It slid to the side, escaping the pressure. It wasn't air. It was solid. It was something moving beneath the skin. Robert's stomach churned. He rushed to the toilet and vomited, his whole body shaking. When he finally stopped, he dragged himself to the sink and washed his face with cold water. He looked in the mirror. His face was pale, eyes wide, but it was his face. Normal, familiar. Must be inflammation, he whispered to his reflection. It'll pass. Body just needs time to recover. He believed his own lie because it was easier than the alternative. Robert went back to bed and lay on his back, staring at the dark ceiling. Beside him, Julia continued to sleep, her breathing deep and regular. He closed his eyes and waited for the dawn to come. The itching didn't stop. The next 3 days passed in a haze of increasing discomfort. Robert returned to work, against Julia's protests and the foreman's not-so-subtle suggestions that he should take a few days off. But he needed the routine. He needed to prove to himself that he was fine. Except he wasn't. His skin continued to change. The thickening spread, forming irregular patches on his shoulders, parts of his back, and his right thigh. When he touched these areas, the sensation was strange, as if his skin was 3 times the normal thickness, hard and inflexible. And the sacs, small accumulations of liquid under the epidermis, visible when he looked closely. They were yellowish, translucent, and when he pressed them, he could feel the fluid moving. The pain was constant now, not sharp, but a deep throbbing pressure, as if his muscles were permanently inflamed. But Robert knew, on some level he refused to acknowledge, that it wasn't his muscles, it was the flesh, reorganizing, growing, changing. His behavior also began to shift in ways he barely noticed. At work, he avoided direct sunlight, preferring to work in the shaded areas of the quarry. He drank water compulsively, bottles and more bottles, but never felt quenched. And the heat, he sought out the heat. He stayed close to the diesel generator, where the air vibrated with high temperature. He went down to the deepest, dampest parts of the quarry during breaks. Trevor noticed. "You're acting strange, man," he said one Thursday afternoon. They were sitting in the shade, eating sandwiches, quieter than usual, and you smell different. Robert stopped chewing. What smell? Trevor frowned, as if trying to find the right words. I don't know. Sweet, kind of, but not a good sweet, like meat that's been out of the fridge too long. The anger came fast and irrational. I smell normal, Robert spat, standing up abruptly. Stop talking crap. Trevor raised his hands in surrender, eyes wide with surprise. Hey, calm down, man. I didn't mean to offend you. But Robert was already walking away, throwing the rest of his sandwich in the trash and heading back to work. He could feel the stares of the other workers on his back. He knew he was acting strange, but he couldn't control himself. Irritation bubbled beneath his skin, hot and insistent. At home, Julia tried to talk to him. You're sleeping curled up, she said one night, watching him prepare for bed. Like a fetal position, and your skin, Robert, your skin is thicker. I can see it. It's calloused, he replied, avoiding her gaze. From so much work. That's not calloused. That's, I don't know what it is, but you need to see a doctor. I don't need to. Robert, I said I don't need to. His voice rose, echoing in the small room. Julia flinched, surprised. Robert never shouted at her. Never. He took a deep breath, forcing calm. Sorry, I'm sorry. I'm just tired. Julia nodded slowly, but the fear in her eyes was unmistakable. She lay down, turning her back to him. Robert sat on the edge of the bed for a long time after she fell asleep. He looked at his own hands. The skin on his palms was strangely smooth now, almost waxy, and when he clenched his fists, he could feel something moving under the skin of his forearms. It wasn't muscle contracting. It was something else. Something sliding, reorganizing. He went to the bathroom and locked the door. He took off his shirt. The reflection in the mirror stole his breath. The patches of thickened skin now covered most of his torso. Some areas were yellowish, others had a translucent pinkish hue, and beneath the translucent skin he could see structures. They weren't veins or muscles. They were irregular, dense shapes that pulsed faintly. He touched one of the thickest areas on his shoulder. It was hot and completely insensitive. There was no sensation of touch, only deep pressure. One of the fluid sacs had grown, now the size of a coin, on his left flank. He pressed his finger against it and watched the yellowish liquid move, spreading beneath the thin layer of skin that contained it. This will pass, he whispered to his reflection. Body is just recovering, in its own way. But his voice sounded hollow even to his own ears. 1 week after the accident, in the middle of the night, Robert woke up with a feeling of tightness in his chest. It wasn't pain, it was movement. He placed his hand over his ribs and felt something contract beneath the skin. It wasn't his breathing, it was independent of it. A rhythmic, slow movement, like something breathing on its own. Panic rose in his throat. For the first time since the accident, Robert admitted to himself that something was terribly wrong. He got out of bed carefully and grabbed his car keys. He scribbled a quick note for Julia, left early, be back soon, and slipped out of the house before his courage failed him. The municipal hospital was 20 minutes away. Robert drove in silence, watching the deserted road under the faint light of the street lamps. The town was still asleep, just him and his increasingly confused thoughts. A doctor will know what to do. They'll run tests. They'll find out. They'll fix it. The hospital parking lot was almost empty. Robert parked near the emergency entrance and turned off the engine. His hands trembled on the steering wheel. He opened the car door and got out. The night air was cool, but his body felt like it was on fire inside. Every step toward the hospital required conscious effort. The automatic doors slid open with a pneumatic whisper, and then it came. Fluorescent light exploded in his vision. Too bright, too cold, wrong. The smell of disinfectant invaded his nostrils like a physical assault. Chemical, artificial, dead. Robert's body reacted before his mind could process. Visceral panic, animal, pure. His heart pounded. Cold sweat broke out on his forehead. His stomach churned. His legs wanted to run, but he forced himself to stand still, breathing in ragged gasps. What is happening? He tried to take a step inside. His body refused. His muscles locked up. A violent nausea rose, and he had to lean on the door frame to keep from vomiting. And then the thoughts started. They weren't his thoughts, or they were, but twisted, reorganized in a way that made perfect sense and yet was completely wrong. This place cannot help. Doctors do not understand. They will want to cut, remove, destroy. The body is healing, in its own way. It just needs time. The hospital will make it worse. The hospital is dangerous. Go back. Go back now. The logic was flawless. Robert could see the truth in it. Of course, the hospital couldn't help. How could they? They treated normal diseases. And what was happening to him what was it? The question dissolved before he could complete it. Robert backed away. The automatic doors closed. The intense light and the chemical smell disappeared. Immediate relief flooded his body. He got back into the car, breathing easier now. He started the engine. He drove back home. During the entire drive, he felt good about the decision. It had been sensible, rational. There was no need for a hospital. His body was recovering. It was only a matter of time. He didn't even realize he had just fled his own salvation. Julia was in the kitchen when he arrived, making coffee. She turned, surprised. "I thought you had already left for work." "I went to take care of something." Robert went to the coffee maker and poured a cup, avoiding her gaze. "I came back." "What thing?" "Nothing important." Julia was silent for a moment. Then she asked, her voice careful, "Did you go to the doctor?" "I did." The lie came easy, natural. He said it's a normal reaction. Scar tissue. It will diminish over time. Julia's face brightened with relief. "Seriously? Thank God. I was so worried." "You don't need to be." Robert touched her face, smiling. "Everything is under control." And he believed it. In that moment, he truly believed he had gone to the hospital, that the doctor had examined him, that everything was fine. The human mind is capable of believing its own lies when the truth is too unbearable. The following days were one of slow and inexorable deterioration. Robert stopped going to work. He told Julia he was using the sick leave days the company had offered. He spent most of his time in the bedroom, curtains closed, lying in the semi-darkness. The mental confusion worsened. He would forget entire conversations. Julia would ask if he wanted dinner, and 20 minutes later, he wouldn't remember having answered. Sometimes he would look at his own hands and not recognize them immediately. When he looked in the mirror, he no longer felt revulsion. He saw the transformation happening. The plaques of hardened flesh now covered his entire torso. The translucent skin revealed structures that were definitely not normal human organs. Sacs of fluid had multiplied, some the size of eggs now, pulsing rhythmically. And he felt no horror. He felt no fear. Only one thought: normal. It's healing. This is how it should be. He started avoiding his wife seeing him without any clothes on, afraid she would exaggerate about what was happening. 2 weeks after the accident on a Friday morning, Robert felt something different happen. He was lying in bed, Julia asleep beside him, when he felt his breathing change. It wasn't shortness of breath. It was multiplication. He put his hand on his chest and felt it. Air moving in and out, but not just through his lungs. There were other sources, small openings in his skin that opened and closed, pulling in air, breathing. His body was developing new respiratory organs. Robert should have screamed. He should have woken Julia. He should have run to the hospital. Instead, he just turned on his side and went back to sleep, because by then, his mind could no longer process abnormality. Everything was normal. Everything was fine. The body was adapting. It was Trevor who broke the impasse. 3 weeks after the accident, he showed up at Robert's front door. Julia answered, eyes red from crying, face pale with exhaustion. "Is he here?" Trevor asked, worry obvious in his voice. Julia nodded slowly. "In the bedroom. He's not... Trevor, he's not well. Let me talk to him." Julia hesitated but finally moved aside. Trevor went up the stairs with a knot in his stomach. He knocked on the bedroom door. "Robert? It's me, man." "Trevor." Silence. Then a sound. Low. Something between a breath and a gurgle. Trevor turned the doorknob and slowly opened the door. The smell hit him first. Sweet and sickly, like meat left in the sun mixed with something viscous and organic. Trevor covered his nose with his forearm and stepped into the room. The curtains were closed, leaving only a sliver of light cutting through the gloom. But it was enough to see. Robert was sitting in the darkest corner of the room, his back against the wall. His legs were curled against his chest, arms wrapped around his knees. The position would have looked fetal, vulnerable if not for his shape. The mass of flesh that had accumulated on his shoulders and back made him look hunched. His torso was grotesquely thickened, his shirt torn in several places where the flesh had grown too large for the fabric to contain. Through the gloom, Trevor could see the translucent skin on Robert's flank, and beneath it, things moving. Sacs of yellowish fluid pulsed. Dense, irregular structures contracted and relaxed. and there were sounds. Breaths coming from multiple points, some wheezing, others sibilant, none of them coming from Robert's mouth. "Holy shit," Trevor whispered, the blood freezing in his veins. Robert lifted his head. The face was still recognizable. It was still Robert, but on the side of his neck, where there should only be skin, there were 3 moist, irregular protuberances that blinked out of sync. They weren't exactly eyes, more like poorly formed photosensitive organs, with translucent membranes over dark, moist spheres. Robert's mouth opened. The jaw dropped further than it should, revealing normal teeth, but the throat was dark and deep, and something pulsed inside it. When he spoke, the voice came from multiple places, creating a liquid, distorted echo. "Trevor." Trevor took a step back, hitting his back against the door. "Robert, my God, what happened to you?" Robert tried to stand up, but his movement was uncoordinated. Parts of his body moved independently. One of his arms extended, and Trevor saw that the fingers had partially fused, the skin between them forming thick, translucent webbing. "I didn't want to," the voice gurgled, as if his throat were filled with fluid. "Trevor, I'm hungry." And then Trevor understood. It wasn't a rational decision by Robert. It wasn't anger or malice. It was pure biology. The transformed body, operating on instincts that were no longer human, recognized prey, source of nutrients. Organic matter needed to continue the transformation. Robert lunged. The movement was faster than Trevor expected. The deformed mass crossed the room in 2 heavy, stumbling steps, and then it was upon him. Trevor tried to scream, but a hand, if it could even be called a hand anymore, closed over his mouth. The skin was hot and damp, and Trevor felt something pulsing against his lips, breathing coming from the palms. He fought, punched, tried to push, but Robert's body was heavy now, dense, and the strength was superhuman. The last thing Trevor saw before Robert's jaw opened beyond human possibility was one of his friend's true eyes, still blue and recognizable, looking at him with what might have been remorse. Then came the pain. Julia was in the living room when she heard the scream. It wasn't a long scream, just a sharp, muffled sound, cut short as quickly as it began, followed by absolute silence. She ran to the foot of the stairs, her heart pounding in her chest. "Trevor? Robert?" No answer. She climbed the steps slowly, each step an eternity. The bedroom door was ajar. Faint light leaked through the crack. Julia pushed the door open and wished she had never looked. There was blood on the walls, on the floor, splattered in patterns that suggested quick, brutal violence. And in the center of the room, a shape she recognized as her husband only by the torn clothing. Robert was crouched over something. She couldn't see what it was, but the sounds were unmistakable. Chewing, swallowing, bones breaking. Julia tried to scream, but no sound came out. Her legs gave way, and she fell to her knees in the hallway. Robert stopped eating. His head turned. Not his whole body, just his head, twisting at an angle that a human neck shouldn't allow. And he looked at her. Julia saw her husband's eyes, still recognizable, still human on some fundamental level. And she saw tears streaming from them, tears from multiple eyes, because there were more than 2 now. "Julia!" The voice was a liquid gurgle, but it was his. "Run, please, run!" Julia ran. She stumbled down the stairs, crossed the living room, and burst out the front door. She ran down the street to the neighbor's house and pounded on the door with both fists, screaming for help. But when the police arrived 20 minutes later, they found nothing but an empty house and a bedroom door locked from the inside. When they broke the door down, there was a destroyed room and blood splattered in various parts, and the window through which Robert had fled was broken and stained with blood. The police tried to follow the tracks leading into the forest, but they were not good forest trackers, and it was already dark, which made the search difficult. Julia called Marcus that night. He answered on the 3rd ring, his voice sleepy. "Julia, it's almost 10 o'clock, what?" "Marcus." Her voice was strangely calm, the kind of calm that comes after complete shock. "You need to come. It's Robert." "What happened? Is he hurt?" He's not him anymore, Marcus. I don't know what he is, but you need to come. Now." Marcus packed a bag and left Chicago before midnight. He drove for 6 straight hours, stopping only for gas, his mind racing with possibilities. Stroke, brain tumor, psychotic break. None of the possibilities prepared him for what he found. He arrived at the house at dawn. Police cars were still parked on the street, lights off. Julia was at a neighbor's house, eyes fixed on some distant point. When she saw Marcus, something in her broke. She began to cry, deep, broken sobs that shook her entire body. Marcus hugged her, waiting for her to calm down enough to speak. He killed Trevor, Julia finally managed to say. I saw him. He ate... Oh God, Marcus. He ate Trevor. Marcus felt his stomach turn, but he kept his voice steady. Where is he now? He fled into the forest. We don't know where he is. The police tried to hunt him down, but... Oh my God. The sounds he made. They're waiting for a special team. Marcus looked at the house. From the outside, it looked normal. An ordinary suburban house with a lawn that needed mowing and peeling paint on the windows. I need to see him, Marcus said. No one knows where he is, and... Julia grabbed his arm. Marcus, you don't understand. He's not human anymore. He's a thing. A horrible thing. He's my brother. I have an idea where he might be. Julia looked at the police officers. She was scared, of course, but if Marcus believed her husband could be saved, she wanted to try. Maybe talking to his brother would help. She didn't believe it, but she desperately wanted it to be true. Then I'll go with you, she said. They got into Marcus's car and left. Marcus asked her to recount exactly what had happened. She explained the best she could and cried a few times as she spoke. They followed a dirt road to a mountainous area, and in approximately 1 hour, they reached a 2-story stone chalet, a country house where Robert and Marcus's father used to take them hunting. Marcus stared at the cabin. The door was open, broken, and there was silence, but not complete silence. There were sounds coming from upstairs, breaths, multiple and unsynchronized, and something else, a sound of something moist and organic, like flesh moving against flesh. He climbed the stairs slowly. The smell intensified with every step, sweet and putrid, organic in a deeply wrong way. The bedroom door was in front of him. Dark stains, dried blood, splattered the wood. Marcus knocked on the door. Robert, it's me. Marcus. The sound stopped. Absolute silence for 5 seconds that felt like an eternity. Then a voice, low, gurgling, but unmistakably Robert's. Marcus, don't come in. I need to see you. Don't want you to see. Robert, I'm a doctor. I can help. Whatever is happening, we can... A laugh. Or something that would have been a laugh if it hadn't been so wet and distorted. Help. No one can help. Marcus put his hand on the doorknob. I'm coming in now, Robert. Is that okay? A long pause. It's okay. Marcus turned the knob. Locked. But when he pushed, the door yielded. The lock had been broken from the inside, probably by the police. Someone had just pulled the door back closed upon giving up on entering. Marcus pushed the door open and stepped inside. The room was destroyed. Broken furniture, scratched walls with deep marks in the paint and even the plaster beneath. The bed mattress had been ripped, foam scattered across the floor. And there was blood. So much blood. Dry now, black under the faint light coming through the curtain. And in the farthest corner, in an area where the destruction was minimal, as if he had specifically avoided that space, was Robert. Marcus stopped breathing. What he was seeing should not be possible. Not biologically, not physically, not in any universe that made sense. Robert, if that could still be called Robert, was sitting against the wall. But sitting was an inadequate description. It was more like he was collapsed, folded over himself in ways human bodies should not fold. The mass of flesh that composed his torso had grown grotesquely, creating irregular, asymmetrical protuberances. Some areas were hard, with a texture resembling an insect's carapace. Others were soft and translucent, revealing structures that pulsed slowly within. The arms, they still existed, they were still recognizable as arms, were deformed. One ended in something that might be a hand, but the fingers had fused into 3 thick appendages. The other arm was longer than it should be, with extra joints that bent at wrong angles. His legs were hidden beneath the mass of his body, but Marcus could see movement there, contortions beneath the flesh, and the breathing. God, the breathing. It came from at least 6 different points, small openings in the skin that opened and closed, some with sibilant sounds, others with wet gurgles. Robert's chest rose and fell, but in an uncoordinated way, as if different parts were breathing at different rhythms. But the worst, the absolute worst, was the face. It was still Robert's face. Deformed, yes. Stretched in some places, compressed in others. But Marcus recognized the eyes. Still blue, still human, and filled with agony. There were other eyes too, 3 of them, growing in an irregular pattern on the side of his face and neck. They weren't completely formed, more like sketches of eyes, with thin membranes over spheres that rotated purposelessly. But the true eyes, the original ones, focused on Marcus and filled with tears. Robert's mouth opened. The jaw dropped much further than it should, revealing a dark, deep throat. And from somewhere inside that darkness came the voice, Cuss. Marcus couldn't move, couldn't process. His medical mind tried to categorize, diagnose, understand, but there was no category for this. There was no diagnosis. There was no possible understanding. How, was all he could say. Robert made a sound that might have been a sob. His entire body contracted, and Marcus saw waves of movement pass beneath the translucent skin, organs that shouldn't exist pulsating, structures that defied anatomy reorganizing. Quarry, accident, something in the stone. The words came out in irregular bursts, each seeming to cost immense effort. Liquid, entered, changed, doesn't stop. Marcus finally managed to take a step forward, then another. He approached his brother as one would approach a wounded animal. Slow, careful. Robert, we need to take you to a hospital, tests, treatment. The laugh returned, wet and broken. Too late, too late. It's not late. There's always... Marcus. The voice was momentarily clearer, firmer. I killed Trevor. I ate him. Robert's body contracted violently. Marcus saw spasms race through the mass of flesh. One of the arms struck the air involuntarily. I can't control. I'm hungry. So hungry. The true eyes fixed on Marcus again, and the terror in them was absolute. Go away. Please. Marcus felt bile rise in his throat, but he forced himself to speak. I'm going to get help. I'm going to... No! The shout came from multiple places simultaneously, a cacophony of sounds that echoed in the room. Marcus stumbled backward, hitting the wall. Robert, the creature that was Robert, was breathing heavily now, all his respiratory orifices working in overdrive. Don't bring anyone. Marcus, promise me. I can't just promise. Let me stay here until it's over. Over? Marcus felt tears burning his own eyes. Robert, are you talking about dying? One of the true eyes blinked slowly, an assent. Already died? This is not me, just a piece of what I was. Marcus slid down the wall until he was sitting on the floor, still looking at his brother through his tears. How long? Don't know. Changes. Accelerating. Days. Maybe. Silence fell between them. Only the sounds of the multiple breaths and the occasional wet movement of the flesh reorganizing filled the space. I'm so sorry, Marcus finally said. I should have forced you to get checkups. I should have. Not your fault. I chose not to go. Stupid pride. One of the deformed arms moved, extending slightly toward Marcus. The gesture was so human, so recognizable, that it broke something inside the doctor. Stay with me? Robert asked, his voice almost inaudible now. Don't want to die alone. Marcus nodded, unable to speak. He spent the next 3 hours sitting in that destroyed room, watching his brother slowly transform into something less and less human. They spoke little. There was very little to say. But Marcus stayed, and that was enough. When night began to fall, Marcus finally left the room. He found Julia still at the neighbor's house, and the two spent the night in silent vigil, waiting. The next 4 days were a waking nightmare. Marcus and Julia took turns, staying close enough to hear if Robert needed anything, but far enough away that he wouldn't be tempted by their presence. It seemed that Robert could no longer move his entire body, only some parts, but he always stayed in the same place. The sounds from the room changed. They became more intense, more frequent, flesh moving, bones cracking and reforming, and the screams, occasional, agonizing, inhuman. On the morning of the 4th day, Marcus woke up to a different sound. It wasn't screaming, it was crying. He climbed the stairs and stopped in front of the closed bedroom door. Robert? Marcus. The voice was almost unrecognizable now, more liquid than solid, echoing unnaturally. I need to tell you something. I'm listening. Trevor's body in the closet. Sorry, couldn't let her see. Marcus closed his eyes, feeling a new wave of nausea. It's okay. No, it's not okay. Nothing is okay. Marcus, it's getting worse. I can't take it anymore. What do you mean? It hurts. Everything hurts. Flesh growing. Over. Inside. It doesn't stop. It never stops. A long pause. Only multiple and irregular breaths. I can't think straight anymore. Human. Fading. Marcus. I'm afraid of what I'll turn into. Marcus leaned his forehead against the door, tears running down silently. What do you want me to do? The answer was delayed. When it came, it was almost a whisper. End it, please. Don't let me turn completely. Robert, I can't. You can. You have to. I'm your brother. I know you. You would do anything for me. This isn't anything. You're asking me to kill. Yes, I am. Because part of me is already dead, and the rest is suffering. Marcus slid down until he was sitting against the door, his head in his hands. There are other options. Sedation. Weaken. It won't work. Body is not human anymore. Processes differently. Marcus. Silence. Please. Marcus spent the entire day sitting in that hallway, wrestling with himself. Julia came to talk to him at dusk. He asked, didn't he? She said, her voice tired. Marcus nodded without looking at her. And are you going to do it? I don't know. Julia sat down beside him. They remained silent for a long time. I saw what he is, she finally said, or what he's turning into. And Marcus, this isn't life. Not for him, not for anyone. He's my brother. I know. And that's why you're the only person who can do this for him. Marcus looked at his own hands, a doctor's hands, hands that had sworn never to cause harm. I don't know if I can. I know. Julia put her hand on his. But you will. Because you love him. On the morning of the 5th day, Marcus finally made his decision. He waited until Julia left to buy supplies. Then he went down to the garage and picked up the can of gasoline they used for the lawnmower. He climbed the stairs slowly, each step heavy as lead. He stopped in front of the bedroom door. Robert, I'm coming in. Are you alone? Yes. Then, come in. Marcus opened the door. What he saw stole the air from his lungs. The transformation had advanced catastrophically in the last few days. Robert was no longer recognizable as a human form. He was a mass, irregular, asymmetrical, almost amorphous in parts. The flesh had grown over itself, creating folds and protuberances that pulsed with a life of their own. Some areas were hard as chitin, others soft and translucent, revealing internal structures that belonged to no known being. Extra limbs sprouted at random points, incomplete arms, fused fingers, something that might have been a leg but ended in a protuberance without a foot. Everything was moving, involuntary spasms, contractions, as if each part were trying to grow in a different direction. And the sounds, God, the sounds. Breaths coming from at least 10 different points, some fast and superficial, others deep and gurgling. Wet movements of flesh against flesh, occasional cracks of structures reorganizing. But in the center of that mass, partially hidden in a fold of flesh, was Robert's face, deformed almost beyond recognition, stretched. One of the eyes had migrated a few centimeters to the side. The mouth was an irregular slit, but it was him. The eye that was still roughly in the right place focused on Marcus and filled with tears. Thank you, the voice came from somewhere deep within the mass, for coming. Marcus felt his own tears fall as he knelt on the destroyed floor of the room. Robert, don't talk, just do it, quick, please. Marcus looked at the gasoline can in his hands. His fingers trembled so much he almost dropped it. I don't know if I can. You can. The eye blinked slowly. I know. You can. Because you love me. Yes, I love you. That's why. You have to. End my suffering. The mass of flesh contracted violently. Marcus saw waves of pain pass through the translucent structures. Robert, or what was left of him, groaned, a sound that echoed from multiple sources. It hurts, Marcus. It hurts so much, and it will get worse. I feel it growing, inside, consuming. Soon I won't be able to ask. Marcus opened the can with trembling hands. Robert, Shh. The sound was surprisingly gentle. You don't need to say anything. I know. Marcus began to pour the gasoline. The liquid spread across the floor, darkening the wood. The strong smell mixed with the sweet, putrid odor that already dominated the room. He poured it around Robert, creating a circle. His hands trembled so much that some of the gasoline splashed onto his own clothes. When the can was empty, Marcus dropped it and approached his brother. He knelt as close as he could bear. "I'm so sorry," he whispered, "for everything. For not pushing harder for you to get checkups. For not..." "Stop." Robert's voice was getting weaker. "Not your fault. It was my choice. Stupid pride." One of the deformed appendages moved, lightly touching Marcus's hand. The skin was hot and damp, pulsing with strange rhythms, but the gesture was so human that Marcus had to hold back a sob. "Take care of Julia. She will need it. I will take care of her." "And Marcus?" "Yes?" The eye focused on him with painful intensity. "Thank you for giving me peace." Marcus took the box of matches from his pocket. His hands trembled so much that he dropped 3 before he could hold one firmly. "Robert, do it now, before I change my mind." Marcus struck the match. The small flame flickered in the gloom of the room. So small, so insignificant, but it carried the finality of a universe. Marcus looked at his brother one last time. Robert's eye closed slowly. Acceptance, relief, and perhaps gratitude. "I love you, brother," Marcus said. A low sound came from the mass of flesh. It could have been "me too," or it could have been just escaping air. Marcus chose to believe the former. He dropped the match. The fire caught instantly. Blue and yellow flames raced across the floor, following the trail of gasoline. They climbed onto the mass that was Robert, spreading across the flesh with fierce speed, and the reaction was immediate and horrible. The flesh reacted. It contracted violently, the entire mass convulsing. The respiratory openings closed and opened rapidly, trying to block the smoke. Parts of the body tried to pull away from the flames, but they were too large, too heavy, too fused with the floor. Sounds came from everywhere. Hisses, sizzles, bubbling as pockets of liquid exploded in the heat. And screams, or something like screams, distorted and multiple, echoing from different parts of the mass. Marcus backed away, covering his face with his arm. The flames climbed higher and higher. The smoke grew thicker. The heat became unbearable, but he couldn't look away. Through the flames, he saw Robert's eye, still open, still focused on him. And then he saw something that would haunt him for the rest of his life. The eye blinked, once, slow, deliberate. "Thank you." Then it closed. The movements of the mass began to slow. The convulsions became less violent. The sounds grew fainter. And finally, they stopped. The flesh continued to burn, but now it was just organic matter, lifeless, unconscious, without suffering. Marcus stood there watching until the flames began to spread to the furniture, the floor, the walls, until the smoke became too dense to breathe. Only then did he leave the room. He stumbled down the stairs coughing. He ran out the front door and fell to his knees on the lawn. Behind him, the house began to truly burn. Marcus couldn't exactly remember how he got back into the burning house. He remembered the smoke, the heat, looking for something, anything, he could take with him. He found a small metal box in the bedroom that Robert kept under the bed. Inside were photos, documents, a medal he had won in high school for swimming. Marcus grabbed the box and ran out as the ceiling began to collapse. Outside, he waited. Julia came running a few minutes later, having seen the smoke from afar. She looked at the house, at Marcus covered in soot, and understood. She didn't ask. She didn't need to. They stood there, watching the house burn, until the firefighters arrived. But it was already too late to save anything. It took 3 hours for the fire to be completely extinguished. When they finally allowed Marcus to approach, he searched through the still smoldering debris. In the place where Robert's room had been, he found ashes, fragments of carbonized bones, small pieces of matter that were no longer recognizable as anything specific. Carefully, using cloth found in the rubble, Marcus collected what he could. He put everything in a bundle. It was little, but it was all that remained of his brother. It was 2 days later, on a cold, gray morning, that Marcus finally left the town. Julia had decided to stay with her sister for a while. She needed space, distance, time to process everything she had witnessed. Marcus understood. He needed it too. But first, there was something he had to do. He drove to the Hargrove quarry. The place was abandoned. After the accident and the subsequent deaths of Robert and Trevor, the company had temporarily closed operations while investigations were conducted. The machines were idle, covered in dust. No one was guarding the place. Marcus parked near the entrance and walked to the site of the cave-in. The area had been cordoned off with yellow safety tape, but no one was there to stop him from passing. He crossed the rubble until he found what he was looking for: the stone. It was still there, where it had been left after they pulled Robert out. Larger than a man, porous and strange surface, cracked in several places, but different from how Trevor had described it. The fissures were closed now, sealed, as if the stone had healed itself. Marcus approached cautiously. He touched the surface, cold, completely cold. No liquid, no heat, just ancient rock. He looked around and saw other similar stones exposed in the wall cut where the cave-in had occurred. Deep geological layers, formations millions of years old, and among them, scattered like tumors in healthy tissue, dozens of these strange stones, buried, waiting. For how long? Thousands of years? Millions? Marcus thought of Robert, of Trevor, of the traumatized Julia, of all the lives that had been destroyed because someone had excavated too deep. He took his phone from his pocket and made an anonymous call to the state health department. He reported possible biological contamination in the quarry. He gave enough details to ensure the place would be permanently sealed. It wasn't enough. It would never be enough, but it was what he could do. Marcus returned to the car, took the bundle with Robert's remains from the passenger seat, and began to drive. He drove for hours with no specific destination, just away from the town, away from the memories, away from everything. The sun was beginning to rise when he finally stopped. An empty road in the middle of nowhere, fields on both sides, the sky tinting pink and gold on the horizon. Marcus got out of the car and stood there, the bundle clutched against his chest, and then he started to walk. His steps were heavy, dragging. His clothes still smelled of smoke. The burns on his hands and arms pulsed with pain, but he kept walking. The road stretched empty ahead. No cars, no people, just him and the dawn. And the words began to come, low at first, then louder. A litany, a confession, a plea for forgiveness that would never come. He asked me to. He begged me. His voice broke. I didn't have a choice. Tears streamed freely now, burning his soot-stained face. He was suffering. He was turning into something that wasn't him anymore. I couldn't let it. I couldn't let him turn into that completely. Marcus fell to his knees in the middle of the road, the impact sending waves of pain through his legs. But it was nothing compared to the pain in his chest, the emptiness, the guilt. I killed my brother. The words came out as a confession, as an accusation, as a plea. He asked me to, begged me, and I burned him alive. I saw his eyes, saw when he couldn't finish. Violent sobs shook his body. The bundle fell from his arms. It landed on the road with a soft sound. Ashes and fragments of carbonized bone, all that remained of a man who had been strong, proud, stubborn, a man who had been his brother. Marcus looked at the bundle and then at the sky, where the sun continued its inexorable climb. A new day, as if nothing had happened, as if the world hadn't ended. He thanked me, Marcus whispered to the empty sky. In the end, he blinked, as if he was saying thank you, as if I had done the right thing. He picked up the bundle again, clutching it to his chest. But how can it be the right thing? How can killing someone you love be the right thing? No answer came, only the wind blowing through the empty fields. Marcus slowly got up. His legs trembled. His whole body was shaking, but he forced himself to stand and kept walking down the empty road, under the clearing sky, carrying the remains of his brother and the weight of a choice that would haunt him for the rest of his life. He didn't know where he was going. It didn't matter. All that mattered was to keep moving, because if he stopped, if he allowed himself to think, the weight would be too great. He asked me to, he repeated, his voice raw and broken. I didn't have a choice, but it was a lie. He always had a choice. He could have ignored the request, could have sought another way out, could have waited longer, tried harder, sought help, but he didn't, because deep down, somewhere he didn't want to admit, Marcus knew the truth. He had chosen to end his brother's suffering, chosen to give him peace, chosen to free him from an existence that was no longer life. It had been mercy, it had been love, it had been compassion, but it had also been murder, and Marcus would have to live with that forever. The road stretched ahead, empty and silent. Marcus kept walking as the sun rose, painting the world gold. Behind him, his footprints in the dust of the road were the only mark that he had passed there. Ahead, only the unknown. and in his arms, all that remained of the man who had once been Robert Mitchell, quarry worker, brother, husband, friend, human. Marcus didn't know how many hours he walked. He lost track of time. The sun rose completely, filling the sky with clear, unforgiving light. Eventually, he stopped. He looked around. There was nothing special about that place. Just more road, more field, more emptiness. But it was enough. Marcus knelt again, this time more carefully. He placed the bundle on the road in front of him. His hands trembled as he untied the knot of the fabric. The ashes scattered lightly in the wind. Fragments of carbonized bone, some still recognizable as human, others reduced to dust. Marcus touched the ashes with trembling fingers. They were still slightly warm. Or maybe it was just his imagination. "I love you," he whispered. "I will always love you. And I'm sorry. I'm sorry for everything." The wind blew stronger, lifting some of the ashes. They danced in the air for a moment before dispersing, spreading across the field next to the road. Marcus watched as the remains of his brother were carried away, distributed, returned to the earth from whence they came. When nothing was left but dark stains on the fabric and a few tiny fragments, Marcus wrapped everything up again. He put it in his pocket. He couldn't leave it behind completely. Not yet. He stood up and looked at the horizon. Someday, he would have to go back to Julia, back to some version of normal life. Explain, deal, survive, but not today. Today, he would just walk and try not to think about the sound the flames made when they consumed the flesh, or the smell, or the last blink of that blue eye through the fire. He would try, and he would fail, because those memories were etched into him now, as permanently as the burn scars on his hands. Marcus started walking again, slower now, exhausted, broken, but still standing, because that was all he could do. Keep going, one step after another, under the indifferent sky and the cruel sun, carrying the guilt of having killed the one he loved most, and the terrible certainty that, if he had to choose again, he would do exactly the same thing, because that was what love demanded sometimes, not salvation, but liberation.